Pareidolia is a form of optical illusion, or more precisely a neurological illusion, where our brains try to interpret unfamiliar shapes as familiar ones. If you see a light bulb here or a smiling face here, it's because these shapes are close enough to familiar ones that your brain does a bit of short circuitry to help prevent you from being confused by what you're seeing. It's really much more complicated than that, but I'm not the armchair neuropsychologist. Many of these illusions have a simple explanation. The Dendera light, as I've discussed before, is just a particular set of iconography, but sometimes an image is unique, and presents us with something so clearly improbable that we have to look very closely and carefully to find an explanation. So hold on tight to Occam's razor. At the Great Temple of Abydos, we see the following inscription. By now, viewers of my channel know the Seti I, a title bestowed upon pharaohs, but what's this? A helicopter? A hover tank? And is that a submarine? Of course that's not what's being depicted. But the first thing that should calm us down and stop us from sharing this definitive proof of ancient high-tech is that this isn't a depiction of anything. This is writing. Hieroglyphs, for the most part, don't directly depict the thing they're writing about. This isn't a gigantic frieze showing off Egypt's military might, it's a sentence of some kind. Actually, I'm not telling the whole truth there. It's two sentences of some kind. This set of striking shapes is an example of something called a palimpsest, where one document is written over the top of another. Erasure techniques either wear off over time, can be revealed with modern scanning, or simply were never used, and you end up with two documents on the same page, or in this case, on the same wall. Here is part of a hieroglyphic inscription in honour of Pharaoh Seti I, an early pharaoh of the 19th dynasty. Here it celebrates him repelling the enemies of Egypt, represented by the 9 bows, a very common bit of hieroglyphic wordplay. Now, let's say you're Seti's son, and you like the temple, but you wish it was more about you. Well, you wouldn't be the first pharaoh to take someone else's monuments and pass them off as your own, but first you have to plaster over the original carvings. Make the wall flat again, so it can be carved once more. Here's an inscription honouring Seti's son, Ramesses the Great, proclaiming him Egypt's protector and conqueror of foreign lands. So far so good, but there's a problem. You've erased a stone carving with plaster, but although stone is forever, plaster very much is not. Over centuries it'll dry and crack and fall away, revealing that the smooth stone surface that your engravers wrote on was an illusion. So here are these two carvings, engraved in the same spot, shown on top of one another, colour-coded so you can make some sense of what's happening, blue for Seti and red for Ramesses. Not quite the clear image of modern warfare you were expecting, okay. Here they are, the same colour, laid out on top of the actual carving. There are some differences between the hieroglyphs I've drawn and the ones that are actually carved, just because I used a particular hieroglyphic set and these symbols are proportioned slightly differently. But I think it's pretty clear. And here again, just so you can see it, the two carvings shown as separate colours. So, this gives us two explanations. One is probably more likely than the other, but judge for yourself. The first hypothesis is that the ancient Egyptians had tanks and submarines and helicopters, but mentioned them only once and only here, and these technologies were of literally no use against any of their enemies. The other hypothesis is that common and well-known hieroglyphs are carved on top of each other, which was a fairly common practice, particularly with the glory hog pharaohs of the New Kingdom. These two hypotheses aren't remotely close in likelihood. And that's the thing about fringe theories. A defense of them is often, you can't prove it didn't happen, but I don't have to. The most simple explanation, the one that requires less new evidence to hold up, is the one that needs to be shown to be wrong. The helicopter hypothesis needs a lot of new evidence, so it needs to be shown to be right. And if you don't have that evidence, and you don't, then your hypothesis is as worthless as if you'd said, you can't prove that Ramesses the Great wasn't a fan of Star Wars. Intellectually honest people have to admit that they can't be 100% certain about a lot of things, because certainty is the domain of either mathematical definition or wild guessing and blind faith. And because we can't admit to 100% certainty, there are those who'll take that technical uncertainty and say, aha, so you admit it is possible. And they often confuse possible with remotely probable. Here's another example. The universe is big enough that somewhere it isn't literally impossible that a commemorative South Park mug is orbiting a distant star. After all, atoms can form the shape of commemorative South Park mugs, it's just that the odds of them doing so without human intervention are vanishingly small. It's nowhere near as likely as the alternative hypothesis that no such mug exists in such a place. So beware the temptress of possibility. In practical, everyday definitions of the word impossible, it's impossible that the ancient Egyptians had helicopters, just as it's impossible that Ramesses the Great was a fan of Star Wars. He was clearly a Trekkie. This is the last video I'm making in 2021, and I want to say thank you so much to everyone who's been watching my videos since the first one in January. I'll be back in the new year, but in the meantime, I have a favour to ask. I've kept up a weekly upload schedule all year, and we know what happens to channels who break their patterns. They get buried by the algorithm. So if you're a regular viewer who hasn't yet subscribed, please do so. It makes it much more likely that you'll be notified when my new video comes out in January. Also, please consider clicking the bell icon. That means you'll definitely be notified, and it helps me a lot, as it means my 2 weeks off for the holidays won't harm my channel in the new year. The royal luminaries whose vast temples I inscribe my own glories into are my backers at patreon.com/armchairegypt. Their support has been incredible and very meaningful to me all year. So thank you to Becca Miles, Carly G, Chris Frampton, Edmund Kyberd, It You Trash Crew, James Lenihan, Jeremiah Demster, Joe, kailajay, Ken Poyner, Michael Bowman, Pete, Photosynthetic, Richard Hawks, Ronin X777 and Thinkcork. I wish you all happy festivities, however and whatever you celebrate, and may the new year bring life, prosperity, and health to you all. Thanks for watching. Head over to my channel for more, or click here to see what the YouTube demons think you should watch next. I hope you'll consider subscribing. If you'd like to support and collaborate on the channel with me, go to patreon.com/armchairegypt. You can also join my Discord community. There's an invite link in the description.